I thought the call had ended, but it hadn't. He was listening to everything, every breath, every sob, every crack in my voice. And I had no idea. The night started out normal enough. I was sitting in my tiny apartment, phone in hand, staring at Philip's name glowing on the screen. Our conversation had wrapped up, or at least, that's what I believed. He was my boss, a mafia leader I did courier work for. Nothing fancy, just deliveries, simple transactions, no strings attached. I tossed the phone onto the side table and pulled my knees to my chest, letting the silence wash over me. Philip's voice still echoed in my head, deep and commanding, the way it always was when he gave me instructions. But what I didn't notice was that the call button wasn't red, it was still green. The line was open, and Philip, he was still there, listening on the other end. Minutes later, my brother Marvin burst through the door, his face already flushed with anger. "Jesse, you were late again on that delivery," he snapped, voice sharp and cutting. "Do you have any idea what that means? We've got bills piling up." I tried to wipe away the tears that were already forming in my eyes. "Marvin, I'm exhausted. You need what?" He cut me off, waving his hand dismissively in the air. "You're always exhausted, Jesse. Always distracted. When are you going to grow up? When are you going to take some responsibility?" His words hit me like arrows straight to the chest. I was an omega, weak, fragile, and probably worthless in this world. That's what people kept reminding me of anyway. Hearing it every single day had hollowed me out from the inside. But tonight, something felt different. Marvin's anger had escalated beyond the usual frustration, like he was channeling all his life's disappointments directly at me. "You know why Dad left, don't you? It was because of you. Because of what you are," he continued, venom dripping from every syllable. "An omega. The family shame. Just a aim we have to carry." I closed my eyes and let his words sink in. Let them settle into the familiar wounds that never seemed to heal. Crying didn't come easily to me anymore. This wasn't new. It never was. Marvin believed I was the biggest mistake of his life. And maybe he was right. But what I didn't know was that Philip, my alpha boss who never had time for anyone, was still on that call. He heard everything. Every single word. Every time my voice broke. Every moment I tried to hide my pain. The night dragged on and I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what tomorrow would bring. More of the same, probably. But at 4 in the morning, my phone started buzzing. I grabbed it groggily and squinted at the screen. It read, "Philip calling." My heart jumped into my throat. Why was he calling at this hour? Was there an emergency? Had I missed a delivery? But when I answered, all I heard was one sentence, his voice carrying an unfamiliar edge of concern. "Jesse, what's your address?" I froze. My mind raced through a dozen possibilities, none of them making sense. Why would Philip need my address now? We'd never met outside of work-related situations. I'd always gone to his office, or the designated drop-off points. This was completely out of character for him. My address?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes. Send it to me right now." His tone left no room for argument. My fingers trembled as I typed out my address and hit send. The moment it went through, he hung up. I sat there in the darkness, clutching my phone, completely bewildered. What was happening? Had I done something wrong? Was he angry about the late delivery Marvin had mentioned? 20 minutes passed in agonizing silence. I couldn't go back to sleep. My mind kept replaying the phone call, Philip's urgent tone, the way he demanded my address without explanation. Then I heard it, a car engine outside, the sound of a door slamming. I rushed to the window and peered through the curtains. A sleek black car was parked right in front of my building, and emerging from it was Philip himself. Even in the dim streetlight, his silhouette was unmistakable, tall, broad-shouldered, radiating authority even in the dead of night. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst through my ribcage. He was here, actually here, at my apartment. At 4 in the morning, I heard footsteps on the stairs, heavy and purposeful. Then came the knock, firm, demanding. I stumbled to the door, my legs barely supporting me. When I opened it, there he stood, filling the entire doorway. His gray eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Jesse," he said, voice low and controlled. But I could sense something simmering beneath the surface. We need to talk. I nodded, unable to form words. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, and suddenly my cramped apartment felt even smaller with his presence dominating the space. His scent hit me immediately, leather and musk, undeniably alpha. My omega instincts responded involuntarily, my body recognizing him as something powerful, something protective. He looked around the apartment, taking in the peeling paint, the secondhand furniture, the general state of neglect. His jaw tightened. You live here? Like this? I felt defensive heat creep up my neck. It's what I can afford. Alone? He asked, though his eyes had already found the closed bedroom door where Marvin was presumably sleeping. With my brother, I admitted quietly. Something flickered across Philip's face, recognition. Maybe anger. The one I heard on the phone. My blood ran cold. You heard that? Every word, Jesse. Every single word. He took a step closer, and I instinctively backed up until I hit the wall. But he didn't crowd me aggressively. Instead, his proximity felt almost protective. The call never disconnected. I heard how he spoke to you. What he called you. What he blamed you for. Shame flooded through me so intensely I wanted to disappear. That's just how we are. Family stuff. Nothing unusual. Nothing unusual? His voice rose slightly, controlled fury breaking through. He degraded you. Made you feel worthless. And you think that's normal? I couldn't meet his eyes. I am an omega. People say things. It's just how the world works. No. The word came out sharp and final. That's not how my world works. And you're not staying here another night. I looked up at him, confused and overwhelmed. What are you talking about? I can't just leave. This is my home. Marvin needs to learn that you're not his emotional punching bag, Philip interrupted. And this isn't your home, Jesse. This is your prison. Tears welled up in my eyes again. But this time they were different. Someone was actually seeing me, really seeing me for the first time in years. Someone cared enough to show up in the middle of the night because he'd overheard my pain. I don't understand, I whispered. Why do you care? I'm just someone who delivers packages for you. We barely know each other. Philip's expression softened fractionally, though his eyes remained intense. You think I haven't noticed you, Jesse? You think I don't see how you push through exhaustion to make every delivery on time? How you smile even when you're clearly struggling? How you treat everyone with kindness even when they don't deserve it? His words shattered something inside me. All this time I thought I was invisible, just another faceless courier in his vast operation. I've been watching you longer than you realize, he continued. And tonight, hearing what you endure, he paused, collecting himself. I can't let you stay here. I won't. The finality in his voice made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. This was a decision he'd already made. And somehow, despite the chaos of the moment, despite my fear and confusion, a tiny spark of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. I couldn't believe Philip would actually follow through. A man like him, constantly busy running an entire mafia empire, showing up for someone like me seemed impossible. But Philip never made empty promises. When he said something, he meant it. I quickly straightened my clothes and splashed cold water on my face, trying to make myself presentable. Within minutes, there was a heavy knock at the door. My hands shook as I opened it wider, and there he stood in all his intimidating glory. Tall with broad shoulders, dressed in dark clothing that made him look even more dangerous. His scent immediately filled the small entryway, that distinctive combination of leather and musk that marked him as alpha. It was so overwhelming that my entire body reacted, my omega nature instinctively recognizing his dominance. I tried to step back, needing distance to think clearly, but his hand shot out and gently grasped my wrist. The grip was firm but not painful, more possessive than aggressive. Jesse, he said, his voice carrying that low, dangerous quality that always made people listen. But underneath it, I detected something else, barely contained concern. Let's go inside. Now, I let him in, my legs trembling with each step. My mind was racing with one thought. He'd heard everything. All of Marvin's cruel words. My pathetic attempts to defend myself. The tears I couldn't hold back. The humiliation was crushing. Philip walked straight into the living room where Marvin was sprawled on the couch, half asleep in front of the flickering television. When my brother's eyes finally focused on the strange man who'd entered our apartment, they widened in shock and confusion. "Who the hell are you?" Marvin demanded, sitting up quickly. "What are you doing in my house at this hour?" Philip didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved forward with measured, deliberate steps. Before I could process what was happening, he'd grabbed Marvin by the collar and pinned him against the wall with seemingly effortless strength. My heart stopped. I'd never seen Philip lose his composure like this before. "Those things you said to your brother," Philip spoke quietly, but his voice carried a dangerous edge that made the temperature in the room drop. "If you ever speak to him that way again, I will personally remind you why hurting omegas is the worst mistake anyone can make. Do you understand me?" Marvin's tough guy attitude evaporated instantly. All his bluster and anger disappeared, replaced by genuine fear. He nodded frantically, unable to form words as Philip's gray eyes bore into him. Philip released him and Marvin collapsed back onto the couch, visibly shaken. Then Philip turned to face me, and those cold, sharp eyes that had just terrified my brother softened considerably when they met mine. "Jesse, pack your things. You're coming with me. Right now." "What?" I stammered, completely thrown by the command. "I can't just leave. This is where I live. And Marvin—" "This isn't your home," Philip stated flatly, cutting through my protests. "A home is supposed to be safe, a place where you're valued and protected. This is just a place where you're slowly being destroyed." Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. He was right, completely, devastatingly right. Living here wasn't really living at all. It was barely surviving, waiting for the next insult, the next reminder of how worthless I supposedly was. "Jesse." Philip moved closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "You deserve so much better than this. And He hesitated as if the words were difficult for him. "I'm not going to leave you here. Not anymore." Those words hit me harder than anything Marvin had ever said. An alpha, this powerful, busy, important man, was standing in my apartment at 4 in the morning, telling me I deserved better, protecting me, choosing me. I nodded slowly, unable to trust my voice. Moving mechanically, I went to my room and grabbed a small bag, throwing in some clothes and basic necessities. My hands were still shaking as I zipped it up. This was really happening. I was leaving. When I emerged, Philip was waiting by the door. Marvin hadn't moved from the couch, just stared at us with a mixture of shock and resentment. But he didn't say anything. For once in his life, my brother was speechless. Philip took my bag from my hand and then, surprisingly gently, took my hand in his. "Come on," he said softly. We walked out together, leaving behind years of pain and neglect. The night air was cold against my tear-stained face as we descended the stairs. Philip's sleek black car waited at the curb, expensive and intimidating, just like its owner. He opened the passenger door for me, another unexpected gesture of consideration. I slid into the leather seat, feeling completely out of place in such luxury. Philip placed my bag in the back, and then got into the driver's seat. The engine purred to life, smooth and powerful. As we pulled away from the curb, I watched my apartment building disappear in the side mirror. Everything I'd known for years was fading into the distance. Fear and excitement warred inside me in equal measure. "Where are we going?" I finally found my voice. "My place," Philip answered simply. "It's secure, safe, and you'll have your own space to figure things out." "But why are you doing this?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "I'm nobody, just a courier you hired. Why would you care what happens to me?" Philip's hands tightened on the steering wheel. For a long moment he didn't respond, just kept his eyes on the road ahead. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than usual. "Because I've been paying attention, Jesse, more than you realize. I see how hard you work, how much you endure, how you keep going even when everything is stacked against you." He paused, then added quietly, "And when I heard what you were going through tonight, something in me snapped. I couldn't let it continue." My throat tightened with emotion. Nobody had ever talked about me like that before. Like I mattered. Like I was worth protecting. "Thank you," I whispered, the words inadequate for what I was feeling. "Don't thank me yet," he replied, though there was a hint of warmth in his tone now. "Just trust me, okay?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see it with his eyes on the road. Trust was hard for me. Years of disappointment and betrayal had made me wary of everyone. But something about Philip felt different. Solid. The city lights blurred past the windows as we drove through the empty streets. Dawn was still hours away, but somehow it felt like morning had already broken inside me. Like I was emerging from a long dark night into something new. Philip's presence beside me was steady and reassuring. Whatever happened next, whatever this strange new chapter of my life held, at least I wasn't facing it alone anymore. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt a tiny flicker of something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. Philip's mansion looked like something straight out of a crime thriller novel. Marble floors gleamed under subtle lighting. High ceilings created an almost cathedral-like atmosphere, and everywhere I looked there were security cameras and silent guards stationed at strategic points. The moment I stepped inside, anxiety gripped me. This world was so far removed from my reality that I felt like an intruder. Someone who clearly didn't belong in such opulence. Philip guided me through an impressive hallway, past artwork that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime, up a grand staircase with an ornate banister. Everything screamed wealth and power. Finally, he stopped in front of a set of double doors and pushed them open. "This is your room," he announced, gesturing for me to enter. I stepped inside and my jaw dropped. The bedroom was enormous. Easily 3 times the size of my entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the center, dressed in what looked like expensive linens. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, the lights still twinkling in the pre-dawn darkness. There was even a sitting area with a plush couch and reading chair. "Philip, this is too much," I managed to say, my voice barely audible. I turned to look at him. He stood near the doorway with his arms crossed. But his expression wasn't the usual stern mask he wore. There was something softer there, something almost vulnerable. "Why are you doing all this?" The question came out more desperately than I intended. "I'm just your courier, someone you hired to deliver packages. This doesn't make any sense." His gray eyes studied me intently. "Because letting you stay in that environment wasn't an option. You shouldn't be somewhere that drains the life out of you every single day." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "And because you matter to me, Jesse. More than you apparently realize." My heart skipped several beats. "But how? We barely interact. You give me assignments and I complete them. That's our entire relationship. You really don't see it, do you?" Philip moved into the room, closing the distance between us by a few steps. "I notice everything about you, Jesse. I've been observing you far longer than you think. The way you handle difficult clients with patience even when they're rude. How you push through obvious exhaustion to meet every deadline. That smile you force when you're clearly struggling with something." He was watching me. Paying that much attention? The revelation made my head spin. "I'm aware of how strong you actually are," he continued, his voice dropping to a gentler register. "You endure so much and still manage to show kindness to everyone around you, even when you receive none in return." His jaw tightened. "And last night, listening to how your brother treats you, hearing those awful things he said, I couldn't ignore it anymore." I looked away, shame washing over me again. "That's just normal family tension. Siblings argue. Stop," he interrupted firmly. "Stop minimizing what happened. That wasn't an argument. That was systematic emotional abuse. And you've been accepting it as normal for so long that you can't even recognize how wrong it is." His words cracked something open inside me that I'd kept carefully sealed. He was right. Deep down, I knew he was right. But admitting it meant acknowledging how broken my life had become. "I was just trying to survive," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Just trying to get through each day without completely falling apart." "I know," Philip said, and suddenly he was right in front of me. He lifted my chin with his finger, forcing me to meet his intense gaze. Those gray eyes held mine with such focus that I couldn't look away even if I wanted to. "But survival isn't living, Jesse. And from now on you're here, with me, under my protection. Nobody gets to hurt you anymore. That's my promise." A tear escaped and rolled down my cheek. When was the last time someone had promised to protect me? When had anyone ever made me feel like I was worth protecting? "I don't understand any of this," I admitted. "Why you care, why this matters to you. I'm just an omega. Invisible. Forgettable." Something fierce flashed in Philip's eyes. "You're not invisible to me. You never have been. And you're certainly not forgettable." His thumb gently wiped away my tear. Get some rest. We'll talk more later. But for now, just know that you're safe here. Completely safe. He stepped back, giving me space, and headed toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back one more time. If you need anything, food, water, extra blankets, anything at all, just ask. There are staff members available at any hour. This is your home now, Jesse. Start getting used to it. Then he was gone, the door clicking softly shut behind him. I stood alone in that beautiful, overwhelming room, trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. My entire life had shifted on its axis. I'd gone from a cramped apartment where I was constantly belittled to a mansion where an alpha mafia boss had just promised me protection and safety. Walking over to the massive bed, I sat down on the edge. The mattress was so soft I almost sank into it. I ran my hand across the smooth sheets, still unable to believe this was real. Through the windows I watched the city slowly wake up as the sun began its ascent, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Philip's words echoed in my mind. He'd noticed me, really noticed me. All those times I thought I was just another anonymous face in his organization. He'd been paying attention, observing, caring. But one question wouldn't leave me alone, circling my thoughts relentlessly. Was this just about protection? Was he simply being a decent person by removing me from a bad situation? Or was there something more beneath the surface, something neither of us had fully acknowledged yet? I lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. My body was exhausted, but my mind was racing too fast for sleep. Everything felt surreal, like I might wake up any moment and find myself back in my old apartment. This entire night nothing but a desperate dream. But the softness of the sheets, the faint scent of Philip's cologne lingering in the room, the view of the city from my window, it was all undeniably real. This was happening. My life had genuinely changed overnight. For so long I'd accepted that my existence would always be small and painful. That being an Omega meant settling for scraps of respect, for spaces where I was merely tolerated rather than welcomed. That my role was to endure, to serve, to fade into the background. Philip had shattered that acceptance in a single night. He'd looked at me and seen value, seen someone worth protecting, worth caring about. And that realization was more terrifying than comforting, because it meant I had something to lose now. Hope was dangerous. It made disappointment hurt so much worse. But as dawn fully broke outside my window, bathing the room in gentle morning light, I made a decision. I would trust this. Trust him. Even if it scared me. Even if I didn't fully understand it. Because the alternative, going back to merely surviving, was no longer acceptable. Not after experiencing what it felt like when someone actually saw me. 3 weeks had passed since I started living in Philip's mansion. My role had evolved from mere houseguest to his official assistant. He brought me to his meetings, had me organize documents, and kept a watchful eye on me as if I might shatter at any moment. Gradually, I was learning about his world. The underground deals, the coded conversations, the constant undercurrent of danger. Yet somehow, with Philip beside me, I felt more secure than I ever had in my supposedly normal life. But one particular evening, everything shifted in a way I hadn't anticipated. We were at an upscale restaurant for one of Philip's confidential meetings. The establishment screamed exclusivity with its dim amber lighting, private booths, and clientele who spoke in hushed tones about matters that never saw daylight. I sat slightly apart from the main table, diligently taking notes and trying to remain as invisible as possible while still being useful. That's when another alpha approached me. I would later learn his name was Horace, one of Philip's primary rivals in the underground network. His smile was charming but predatory, the kind that made my instincts scream warnings even before he opened his mouth. "So you're Philip's new pet, Omega?" Horace said, his tone dripping with mockery disguised as curiosity. Nothing about his expression felt genuine. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat but didn't respond. Something about the way he looked at me made my skin crawl, like I was being assessed as property rather than acknowledged as a person. Horace stepped closer, then reached out and grabbed my wrist with a grip that was just tight enough to be threatening. "You're quite appealing, you know. Perhaps you'd be interested in exploring better opportunities. Philip's always so consumed with business. I doubt he gives you the attention an Omega like you deserves." Before I could pull away or formulate a response, Philip was there. One moment he was across the room at his table. The next he stood between us like a wall of controlled fury. He wrenched Horace's hand away from my wrist with such force that I heard the other alpha grunt in surprise. "You touched him," Philip stated, his voice dropping to a temperature that could freeze fire. The entire restaurant seemed to fall silent, all eyes turning toward us. "If you ever make that mistake again, I will break every bone in your hand." "This isn't a threat, Horace. Consider it a guarantee." Horace laughed, but the sound was hollow and strained. Fear flickered visibly in his eyes, despite his attempt at bravado. "Come on, Philip. I was just having a conversation. No need to get territorial." "Nobody jokes about my omega," Philip declared with absolute finality. He didn't even glance at me when he said it, but his words rang through the space like a bell, claiming me publicly in front of everyone present. My omega. Those two words struck me with the force of a physical blow. Heat flooded my cheeks, part embarrassment, part something else I couldn't quite name. He just claimed me in front of his rival, in front of all these dangerous people. Made it clear that I belonged to him. Horace retreated with his associates, muttering something inaudible. The meeting concluded rapidly after that, tension still crackling in the air. Philip took my hand, another public gesture of possession, and led me out of the restaurant. Throughout the entire drive back to the mansion, he remained silent, his jaw set in a hard line that spoke volumes about his barely contained emotions. Once we arrived home, the silence continued as we entered the house. I could feel the tension radiating off him in waves. Finally, in the privacy of his study, he turned to face me while shrugging off his jacket. "Did you think I would allow anyone else to put their hands on you?" His voice was rough, control slipping at the edges. His gray eyes blazed with an intensity I'd never seen before. I didn't expect him to. I started to explain. "Jesse." He cut me off, reaching out to take my hand and pressing it flat against his chest. His heartbeat thundered beneath my palm, racing far faster than I would have imagined possible for someone usually so composed. This powerful alpha was actually rattled. "I am possessive when it comes to you. Extremely so. I don't fully understand when it started or why it's this intense, but it's beyond my control now." My own heart was pounding just as hard. Whatever he was feeling, I was experiencing something parallel, this overwhelming pull toward him that went far deeper than simple gratitude for his protection. "Philip," I began, my voice barely steady, "I feel something too, something I can't quite explain." He pressed his finger gently against my lips, silencing me. "Not yet. When you're completely certain about what you're feeling, when there's no doubt in your mind, then tell me. I can be patient. I will wait." He left the study then, leaving me standing there alone with my hand still tingling from where it had rested against his chest. My heart no longer felt entirely like my own. Somehow part of it had become intertwined with his. The next few days were strange. Philip didn't avoid me, but there was a new carefulness to his interactions, as if he was consciously giving me space to process everything. Yet I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking, his expression unguarded in those brief moments. I found myself replaying the restaurant scene, constantly, the way he'd moved so quickly to defend me, how he'd called me his omega without hesitation, the genuine fear I'd seen in Horace's eyes when confronted with Philip's fury. Nobody had ever stood up for me like that. Nobody had ever considered me worth defending. During my time with Marvin, I'd learned to make myself smaller, quieter, less troublesome. I'd accepted being treated as an inconvenience, because that seemed to be my natural place in the world. But Philip saw me differently. To him I was something precious enough to protect fiercely, to claim publicly, to get genuinely angry over when someone disrespected me. One evening I found Philip in his home office, reviewing documents by lamplight. I knocked softly on the doorframe. "Can I come in?" He looked up immediately, his expression softening. "Always." I entered and sat in the chair across from his desk. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "Thank you for what you did at the restaurant." "You don't need to thank me for that," he replied firmly. "Protecting you isn't some favor I'm doing you, Jesse, it's—" He paused, searching for words. "It's fundamental to who I am now. The idea of anyone hurting you or making you uncomfortable is intolerable." "Why?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Why does it matter so much to you?" Philip set down his pen and leaned back in his chair, studying me with those penetrating gray eyes. "Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being just my courier or even just someone I was helping. You became important. essential, and I'm not ready to examine too closely what that means yet. But I know with absolute certainty that I won't let anyone harm you. My breath caught. We were circling around something significant. Both of us aware of it but neither quite ready to name it directly. I'm not going anywhere, I told him quietly, in case you were worried about that. Something in his expression eased, tension I hadn't fully noticed draining away. Good. Because I'm not letting you go. The words hung between us, weighted with unspoken meaning. We were both acknowledging something without actually saying it. This connection growing between us that was becoming increasingly impossible to ignore. I stood to leave, but at the doorway I turned back. Philip, for what it's worth, I'm glad it was you who heard that phone call. I'm glad you came for me. His eyes held mine across the room. So am I, Jesse. So am I. I had no warning. One morning I simply woke up feeling like my entire body was on fire from the inside out. My breathing came in short, rapid bursts. Every inch of my skin felt hypersensitive, reacting to even the soft touch of the sheets. And then there was the scent. My omega scent flooding out of me in waves, sweet and heavy and completely beyond my control. Heat. I was going into heat. Panic seized me immediately. I threw off the covers and stumbled to lock my bedroom door, then rushed to close all the curtains. This was mortifying. Being an omega experiencing heat while living in my alpha boss's house. I couldn't imagine a more humiliating situation. My body wasn't listening to my desperate attempts to suppress what was happening. I wrapped myself in blankets despite the internal fire consuming me, cranked the air conditioning to its maximum setting. But helped. The heat was coming from within, not from any external source. A knock at my door made me freeze. Jesse, Philip's voice carried concern. You missed breakfast. Are you feeling all right? Yes, I called back, trying desperately to keep my voice steady. Just resting. Feeling a bit under the weather, nothing serious. Silence stretched out, lasting long enough that I hoped he'd left. Then his voice came again, deeper and more serious than before. Jesse, I can detect your scent, even through the door. My heart plummeted. Of course he could. Alphas were biologically designed to sense when omegas entered heat. Philip stating it so directly, though, made the embarrassment 1,000 times worse. I'm coming in, he announced. No. I practically lunged toward the door despite my weakened state. Please, Philip. I can manage this myself. Don't come in here. But the door opened anyway. He must have used a master key. Philip stepped inside and stopped dead when he saw me. Flushed with fever, drenched in sweat despite the cold air blasting from the vents. Trembling, wrapped in blankets like they could somehow shield me from biology itself. I watched his pupils dilate as his alpha instincts responded to my condition. Jesse, his voice dropped to that rough register that sent shivers through me. You need assistance. Let me help you through this. I shook my head, backing away even though my body screamed at me to move closer to him. No. I don't want you to see me like this. Vulnerable. Desperate. Everything I never wanted you to witness. He approached slowly, closing the distance between us. His scent enveloped me, leather and musk amplified by alpha pheromones, and my treacherous body responded immediately, the heat intensifying rather than easing. You're not weak. This is biology, nothing more. And abandoning you during this is not something I'm capable of doing. Philip. I tried to protest again. He guided me back to the bed with surprising gentleness, then disappeared into the bathroom. I heard water running. When he returned, he carried a damp towel which he carefully placed on my forehead. Then he helped me drink water from a glass he'd brought, supporting my shaking hands with his steady ones. I won't force anything, he said quietly but firmly. That's not who I am. But if you need water, medication, food, or simply someone present so you're not alone through this, I'm here. I'm not leaving. His kindness broke something open inside me. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. Nobody had ever treated me with such care during a heat cycle before. Usually it was something shameful to be hidden and endured alone. But Philip was acting like my comfort and well-being actually mattered. Like my vulnerable state didn't make me disgusting or pathetic. Thank you, I whispered, barely able to produce sound. He took my hand in both of his, holding it securely. You're mine to care for, Jesse. I'll look after you, always. And when you need me in other ways, I'm prepared for that too. He stayed with me throughout the entire ordeal. Not in the bed. He settled on the couch across the room to give me space while ensuring he was available if needed. Every hour he checked my temperature, brought fresh water and fruit, adjusted the blankets when I threw them off in frustration. His presence was simultaneously torture and comfort. The alpha pheromones he couldn't fully suppress made my heat more intense. But knowing he was there, that I wasn't suffering through this alone, meant everything. Somewhere in the haze of fever and need, a truth crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. I loved Philip. Not just attraction or gratitude, but genuine love that went soul deep. As the worst of the heat finally began to subside, I found him dozing on the couch, clearly exhausted from staying awake to monitor me. Even in sleep he looked alert, like he'd wake instantly if I called for him. I studied his face in the dim light filtering through the curtains, the strong jaw, the slight furrow between his brows that never completely disappeared, the way his usually stern expressions softened in rest. This man had burst into my miserable life, like a storm, upending everything I'd accepted about myself and my place in the world. He'd taken me from a prison disguised as a home and given me actual safety. He'd defended me, cared for me through my most vulnerable moments, and never once made me feel like a burden. How could I not love him? The question now was whether I was brave enough to tell him. He'd asked me to be certain before speaking. Well, I was certain, completely certain. The heat had burned away any lingering doubts, leaving only this fundamental truth. Philip owned my heart, whether he'd meant to claim it or not. When he finally stirred and opened his eyes, finding me watching him, a small smile crossed his face. "How are you feeling?" "Better," I answered honestly. "Much better, actually." He stood and came to sit on the edge of the bed, pressing the back of his hand against my forehead to check for fever. "Temperature seems to have normalized." "Good." "Philip," I began, my heart hammering. "There's something I need to—" "Rest first," he interrupted gently. "Whatever you want to say can wait until you've fully recovered. I'm not going anywhere." So I settled back into the pillows, watching as he returned to the couch, but my mind was made up. As soon as I had my strength back, I would tell him. No more hesitation. No more fear. He deserved to know that he'd captured more than just my gratitude. He'd captured all of me. After the heat passed, the dynamic between Philip and me transformed in subtle but unmistakable ways. He touched me more frequently now. Always appropriate, but each contact lasted a beat longer than necessary. His hand would rest on my shoulder when he passed behind my chair. His fingers would brush mine when handing me documents. He'd absently tuck strands of hair behind my ear while thinking about something else, seemingly unaware of the gesture. But I noticed everything. One afternoon, I was in his office organizing files when he summoned me to his desk with a gesture. "Jesse," he said, setting down his pen with deliberate care. "I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty in your answer." Nervousness fluttered in my stomach. "What is it?" He sighed, and I realized this question was difficult for him too. "Do you believe we're making the right choice? Living this way, with you here with me?" I frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" He stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. "You're an omega. I'm an alpha who runs a criminal organization. My world involves constant danger, threats, violence, people who'd hurt you just to get to me. I brought you here to protect you, but now I'm wondering if I've actually placed you in more danger than before. If you want a safer life, something conventional and normal, then I'd—" He paused, his voice roughening. "I would let you go, despite how difficult that would be." My chest tightened. He was offering me an exit, freedom to leave. But didn't he understand? "Philip," I said, my voice unsteady, my hands trembling at my sides. "Danger exists everywhere for omegas. The world isn't safe for us no matter where we are. But here with you, this is the first time I've ever felt truly protected. The first time someone has made me feel valuable instead of disposable." He turned from the window, something bright and fierce lighting in his eyes. "You're serious? You genuinely want to stay here with me?" I nodded, tears beginning to blur my vision. "Yes, because—" I took a shaky breath. "Because I love you." The words hung in the air between us for a heartbeat. Then Philip was moving, crossing the space separating us in 3 long strides. He cupped my face in both hands with such tenderness, as if I were made of something infinitely precious and fragile. "Jesse, I never want to cause you pain, but letting you walk away would destroy me. Because his own eyes glistened with emotion. He usually kept locked away. Because I love you too. Perhaps I have since the beginning. Maybe from that very first time you walked into my office, looking nervous and determined all at once. But now it's grown into something overwhelming. I can't imagine my existence without you in it. Tears streamed down my face as I absorbed his confession. I love you too, Philip. So much. He kissed me then, soft and slow, pouring emotion into the connection of our lips. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, and in that moment the entire world dissolved. Nothing existed except us. This feeling, this perfect rightness of being together. When we finally separated, both slightly breathless, he spoke again. I want to make you officially mine, through bonding. A permanent mark. Would you be willing to accept that? Bonding. The ultimate commitment between Alpha and Omega. A mark that would last forever, proclaiming to everyone that we belong together. My heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Yes, I breathed. I'm ready for that. I want it. The following week, Philip arranged a private ceremony. Nothing extravagant or showy. Just the two of us in an intimate setting that felt sacred in its simplicity. No witnesses, no elaborate rituals. Only us and this profound commitment we were making to each other. He prepared me carefully, explaining what would happen, making sure I understood the permanence of what we were about to do. His consideration and patience only made me more certain of my choice. When the moment finally arrived, I tilted my head to expose my neck to him. Philip's lips brushed against my skin, gentle and reverent. Then his teeth, sharp canines extending in response to his alpha nature, pressed down and broke through. The sensation was indescribable. Pain and pleasure merged into something transcendent. My entire body reacted to the bite, to the bond forming between us. I could feel emotions that weren't my own flooding through me. Philip's love, his possessiveness, his fierce need to protect me, and simultaneously I knew he was experiencing my feelings, my trust, my surrender, my absolute devotion. The bond settled into place like a puzzle piece clicking home. We were connected now on a fundamental level that went beyond the physical or emotional. Spiritually, we had become one unit. Afterward, when I examined the mark in the mirror, Philip's claim permanently etched into my skin, I marveled at how far I'd traveled from who I used to be. From a broken Omega who believed himself worthless, to someone cherished and bonded to a powerful Alpha who loved me. Philip stood behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist, his chin resting on my unmarked shoulder. How do you feel? Complete, I answered honestly. Like I finally found the missing piece of myself. His arms tightened. You changed everything for me too, you know. I was just going through motions before you. Now I actually have something worth protecting beyond my empire. Someone who matters more than anything else. I leaned back against his chest, letting his strength support me. Through our bond I could sense his contentment, his satisfaction, his love radiating toward me in constant waves. What happens now? I asked quietly. Now we live, he said simply. Together, we face whatever challenges come our way as partners. My world is still dangerous, and there will be threats. But you won't face any of it alone. We're bonded, Jesse. That means we handle everything together from this point forward. I turned in his arms to face him properly. I can handle dangerous. As long as I'm with you. He smiled, a genuine warm expression that transformed his usually stern features. Then we'll be fine. More than fine. Looking at him, feeling our bond humming with life between us, I finally understood what home truly meant. It wasn't a place. It was this being with someone who saw every part of you and chose you anyway. Someone who stood between you and the world's cruelty. Someone who loved you not despite your perceived weaknesses but including all of them. Philip had given me that. He'd given me everything. And now, bound together permanently, we would face whatever came next side by side. No longer alone. No longer afraid. Just us together exactly as we were meant to be.